Excellent. Welcome, everyone, to the third and final panel of today, but the first annual Visceral Pleasure and Extreme Cinema event. In celebration of 2 disgusting years of Kelly's Taboo Terrors, I wanted to bring together a bunch of incredible women to discuss something controversial, and that's extreme horror. I'm Kelly from the Spinsters of Horror, and not only do I write for our website and other publications, but my co-host Jessica and I have a monthly podcast called I Spit on Your Podcast. I created Taboo Terrors as I found myself drifting towards those intriguing, transgressive films, so now I write and podcast about them too. I essentially have fallen in love with extreme horror. So I have to say, folks, content and trigger warnings. If you know anything about Kelly's Taboo Terrors, then I hope you know what you're getting into today. But I want to remind maybe our new viewers that there will be discussions of themes and films that might be upsetting to some viewers. Topics such as rape, assault, death, violence, torture, necrophilia, pedophilia, and more may be mentioned. So viewers' discretion is advised. This panel is called Extreme Horror, the genre, the controversy. It's no secret that the extreme horror world is one rife with controversy. It's often shrouded in secrecy and rumors run amok. A big question that is often asked to fans of extreme horror is, why do you even like these movies? It's a genre that is often misunderstood. So on this panel, our guests will talk about why these films and the genre are so reviled, why they think the genre is insulted regularly, and why they personally love and champion it. So our panelists are, welcome back, Ariel Baska. So Ariel is a filmmaker in the realms of horror and documentary. She recently wrapped her horror short, Our First Priority, which she wrote, directed, and successfully kickstarted, due out later this year. She is a regular contributor to Ghouls Magazine, a comic book reviewer for Comics Bookcase, and the founder, co-host, and executive producer of Ride the Omnibus, a podcast parked at the intersection of pop culture and social justice. At age 3, a bad, terrible babysitter showed her A Nightmare on Elm Street, and she forever became hooked on watching films through her fingers. Next is Jerry Sampson. Jerry is a horror writer, screenwriter, and film analyst. She has a monthly feature on Rue Morgue's website called Beautiful Filth, which focuses on extreme horror films through the female gaze. She writes for Ghouls Magazine, Scream Magazine, Horror Obsessive, and other genre sites, and is currently in pre-production on her first short film. You can find her on Instagram at The Sleeper Must Awaken. We have a newcomer to the panels today, Alison Taylor. So Ali teaches in Screen Studies and Ethics at Bond University, Australia. She is the author of Troubled Every Day, The Aesthetics of Violence and the Everyday in European Art Cinema, and has a monograph on, oh boy. Hey, Ali, you're the expert on possession.
It's cut off. Yeah, Andrzej Żuławski's Possession. That's hopefully, I'm told it's due out in December, so that's
excellent. Great name. Yeah. So Ali has contributed pieces on extreme cinema to Senses of Cinema and The Conversation. You can hear her talk extreme movies and her guest appearances on Zobo with a Shotgun and Ride the Omnibus podcasts. Alison is currently co-writing a book with Jason Jacobs on the work of Nicholas Winding referencing. Thank you.
That's probably going to be where I go with it.
For the Sunny Press Horizons of Cinema series. Last but definitely not at all least, Emma Wolfe. Emma is an Australian-based movie enthusiast with a focus on the horror genre. Emma's background lies in film and television, working as an editor on international and local television programs and videography for not-for-profit organizations. She also has been reviewing films since 2015 on the very successful, super popular YouTube channel, Spooky Astronauts. And I am your host, again, Kelly. So for the folks watching right now, thank you so much for joining us. So what we're going to do, I'm going to ask our panelists, our guests, some questions. And then at the end of like about 45 minutes, about 15 minutes at the end of the hour, we will open it up to our audience for questions. So folks, if you have questions, you're welcome to throw them in, but we're going to answer them at the end of our chat. All right, but you're also welcome to throw out comments as well if you like something we say or something that's relevant. So feel free to do that. All right. So first, I'm going to ask a very important question to everyone. what drew you specifically to extreme horror? And I'm going to open up the floor and start with Emma.
Why'd they do this to me? I think that when I got into horror movies or just movies in general, I was looking for something that would really impact me deeply. I love that feeling of waking up the next day and still thinking about a film, and it just kept getting. It kept the subject matters and like the darkness of film was something that obviously sticks with you more than a comedy. And it just kept getting darker and darker. And so I was kind of seeking out that kind of feeling of waking up the next day and still being disturbed. So it's kind of chasing that. And then obviously like falling into like rabbit holes of finding all of these films that you aren't even sure if they exist or not, like when you got really dark. So, and wondering how far they could push it. I guess being in Australia, like there's a lot of banned movies here, but just looking, I just don't know. I didn't know what was possible, I guess, as a kid. I'm like 18, I should say. I was 18 when when I started looking into dark movies. So yeah, I just kind of pushing for that. And I've always been chasing for the next like darkest film, because it's really interesting to think what they can produce and what is allowed in film. So it's always chasing after that.
Excellent. Ali, Taylor.
Similar, very similar, actually. I mean, I always grew up loving movies and used to watch a bunch of like cult movies and horror films, late night TV here. But I think there was two films that kind of really pushed it for me in terms of being obsessed with anything extreme. One was obviously Possession, which I've spent the last few years thinking about. But that really affected me in a kind of an emotional way that I hadn't experienced with any other film. And then Michael Haneke's Funny Games, which I hadn't seen before. I didn't know anything about it. I think I read like a 2-line synopsis before going and watching it at a film festival and just being like, oh my God. It just like broke all the rules of cinema and genre and stuff in ways that I just didn't know you could do. And so I was just like, wow, why do I feel so uncomfortable? What is this? And then it just ended up then going on to do further study to try to figure it out, basically. But yeah, anything that kind of gets under my skin, makes me feel uncomfortable, that I'm still thinking about, is something that is an experience I chase.
Excellent. Ariel?
So I think I'm going to slightly edit my answer and say that I did not get into extreme horror cinema. It got into me. It like seeped into me way too early in my lifetime, because I lived in other countries where I was exposed to lots of fantastic, gory cinema on screen all the time at all hours of the night when my parents didn't know what I was doing. This seems to be a theme. But I really have to say, like, for me, it's very much been sort of an experience where I've been constantly chasing films that could give me the full range of emotion, because you just don't experience the same kind of thrill from watching, the example was given earlier today of like people breaking up in a coffee shop as you do watching someone get tortured to death brutally. And why not experience the full range of human emotion if you're going to watch something? So, yeah.
Great. Jerry?
Yeah, I've always been into horror. When I was 5, my sister sat me down. She was pissed off at having to babysit me, so she sat me down and made me watch It. And I used to have, she was really sweet. And I used to have
these babysitters.
Well, well, she was my sister too, so really hated me. But when I was a kid, I used to have really, really intense like hypnagogic hallucinations when I was sleeping. And so I was afraid a lot. Like I would just wake up in the middle of the night and I would be really scared. And so that like kind of drew me to, like Stephen King and stuff like that. really young. And then I hit a point where I had watched like all the horror movies. And then when I was like 18, I watched Hostel, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. And I threw horror away. And then obviously I came back pretty fast. And then from there, it was like, all right, well, like I wonder what else there is. And so Gaspar Noé was my first real intro, irreversible into what extreme horror is. And, Lars von Trier, kind of going from there, you do want to find things that you haven't seen before and that are fascinating. And that for me just happens to be really extreme, like movies, stuff that, I'm a screenwriter too. And so formula, you want to see shit that's just like not formulaic and that kind of beats the boundaries over the head and, kills them and eye gouges them. And and that's extreme for horror for me. Yeah. So it's just like a lot of love.
Amazing.
Also a lot of, grossness and terror.
Yeah. It's kind of fun. For me, it was, I've been a horror fan for 25 years. And I kind of dabbled maybe like 6, 7, 8 years ago in the odd movie, like a Serbian film and whatnot. But then kind of went away from it a little bit. And over the last few years, because it's been 2 years for Taboo Terrors, I just, like I said, I found myself going back to these movies. And what really inspired me to start this, to start Taboo Terrors and start looking into these movies, I kind of started reviewing them, dissecting them, watching them, talking about them, not only noticing that there's not a lot of women talking about them, but so I have to like find my community, it was that, of course, now I lost my train of thought. Anyways, but I found myself going back to these movies, and a portion of it is that regular horror just hasn't really been giving me that thrill as it used to, like growing up for like 20 years, So I was kind of looking for something a little bit different. And I find extreme horror, though I think horror does have its moments of being very subversive and transgressive and a lot of social commentary and a lot of visceral feelings you can feel while watching a regular horror movie. I'm bringing this back. I think it just gets even more, like goes to like the 9th degree, the nth degree. It just gives you more in a lot of these different types of films. And I'm just devouring it. And even more so during the pandemic. And maybe that says something about me too, where I'm just stuck at home during a scary global pandemic. And now I'm devouring all of these movies. So it's just giving me that kind of subversive experience that I've been craving, essentially. And then the fun practical effects, like, come on, there's like incredible, brilliant work being done in that regard, So then, right. I can appreciate a good eye gouge or a good like hook or a good, a trench spike going into places. It's cool. It's just fun. There's some thrills there. So my next question is, so going back to extreme horror as a genre, as a whole, what do you think is one of like the main issue that people have with it? And I will again jump back to Emma.
You didn't tell me I was first for all of these.
It just happened.
Really threw me off. I think, coming from my point of view, I get a lot of comments. Obviously, that's my platform, so I get a lot of comments on these kind of things. And one of my most like viewed videos ever is on a Serbian film, and I get so many comments just from people who read the Wikipedia like rundown and haven't actually seen the film themselves, which it's totally fine if people don't want to watch it. I get it. But I find that the main thing is that people can't, switch off that line they can't switch off that line between like fiction and reality. And they think that because something is done in a film, it reflects on them as a human if they watch it. And I have like a huge line where I obviously, it's a film and all of you guys are, involved in film and in one capacity to the next. So the difference, but I feel like a lot of people think that it reflects badly on them if they could ever watch it. So a lot of people say the same thing with animal torture. I see this a lot. And I do respect that people don't, want to watch that all the time. So I try and give shout outs where it where it's appropriate. Obviously, it's a huge spoiler in most films, but I think again, people can't turn off that like, oh, this is real or it's not. But when I see animal cruelty in a film, I know it's fake. So, well, you know, depending on when it's made, I know it's fake. So I guess I can turn that off quite easy, but I can understand some other people can't, and they think. I just see a lot of people jump in and just say like, oh, I can't watch that because of this. And I think that they think it reflects on them. I don't know if that's an unpopular opinion.
Got some bad news for you about that animal torture and Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah.
Well, that's like, depends when.
Or even
70s, 80s, mid.
Or even Andrei Tarkovsky's Andrei Rublev. Like, you don't want to know what actually happened to that horse. I'm sorry.
Well, I think about like Pink Flamingo, but
well, there's that too. There's Necromantic. There's, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. No, that's a great point that maybe it'll, you know, make them look bad, or people will view them weirdly or differently if they watch / enjoy such films.
Yeah, I think so. And I just, and then they also, it's quite like judgmental as well about other people. But I mean, that's because I get comments about it. It's not.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I guess I can turn that off when I watch it. Just like when I see like a ghost in a movie, I'm like, it's just a movie. It's just a movie.
Yeah.
It's the same thing when I see, like, I think about the logistics of it being filmed, and if it is like, say, a certain, like, I'm trying not to say like incest or anything, but if it is like a certain kind of scene, you know that it's not that actor and they're not related, and it's, I don't know, I just never think of it like it's real, I guess.
Right. No, that's amazing.
I'm like a sicko. Everyone's like, okay.
Well, it's true. Like, if you can disassociate in that way, and of course, because it isn't real. They're not really father and daughter, so it's fine. But some people get kind of caught up in that, right? And it's hard for them, which I totally understand. So let's jump over to Jerry. What do you think is like maybe the main issue that the general populace, generally people have with extreme horror?
Yeah, well, I totally agree that a lot of these people haven't seen it, which is totally fine. And when you put the word extreme in front of anything, people are going to automatically have something to think about it. But also just consider like the fact that we are still banning movies in places because people literally think that it's gonna like cause you to be a, I don't know, killer. Like, it's like the fact that we're still doing that, then obviously people are going to look at these extreme movies. They're going to take a look at the log line or the Wikipedia, and they're going to say only a psychotic, like, deranged person would watch this. And I think that a lot of rom-coms are kind of deranged and psychotic. And you know, I mean, look at what kids are watching, you know, coming out of Disney Plus. So obviously extreme horror is different than Hannah Montana or whatever is happening right now, but it's just the perception. It's all perception. If you hear the words of Serbian film, then you automatically think about that thing that you read about the newborn porn.
And that's all you can think about
for whatever reason.
For sure.
People, then they look at you as if you are somebody that does these things or likes it. It's not the content. It's not that you're liking what's happening, but it is transgressive. It's pushing boundaries, and it's making you feel things viscerally. And so if you are somebody that wants to explore that, I think extreme horror is the way to go. If you don't, then obviously don't get into extreme horror. But it's a snap judgment. I think
absolutely.
And sorry, I just wanted to add on to that. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, go on.
Just with what you were saying about like when people read like the log line or like the Wikipedia, I also find, especially like where we are talking about a Serbian film, let's be real, that there's no context to the I know that there's like the context is like, but there's no context, so it's kind of hard for people to read that and go, well, you watch this film, you sicko. But there is like such a context, and it's a storyline, and
absolutely right. And that's what I like, you know, my column for Rue Morgue or whatever you want to call it, column online, it tries to go into that, because you do get like a snap spot when you hear a Serbian film or I Spit on Your Grave or irreversible, and it is all out of context, and it is not in the frame, it's not framed with the story, the narrative. And so it's really just a matter of kind of not like training yourself to not automatically think about the worst thing that you've heard, and kind of like, reining it in, and also just like not actually just judging people for that kind of shit, like,
yeah, we're not a bunch of sociopaths.
Yeah, get over it.
Well, I can't speak for some
Totally
people.
nice.
I don't know. How about you, Ariel?
Well, I mean, I feel like most of the people I know who tell me that they really deeply object to the concept of extreme horror are mostly people who believe that life is trauma, and why would I deliberately want to subject myself to more of that? Like, we've lived through all these horrific things. I'm done with that. I want puppies and rainbows. And to that, I say, you do you. But essentially, if you want to look behind the veil, if you want to actually like look for cinema or art, any kind of art that really looks below the surface, you really have to look to science fiction, and you have to look to horror, and you, even within both of those realms, going toward the more extreme is always the way it's going to have to go if you want to see things that push boundaries and that push you in different directions that you might not expect to be pushed. And so I think a lot of people don't want to be pushed, especially right now because of the pandemic. And so a lot of people that I interact with regularly on Clubhouse now are frequently like really astonished by the fact that I have this knowledge of all of these things. And they're like, yeah, but sunshine and rainbows, like what's wrong with you? You seem like a normal person. And I'm like, well, this is not to say that I endorse the killing of puppies, and, but it is to say that I think that having boundaries pushed is always a beneficial thing. And anyway.
Yeah. Ali?
Well, I'd like to start by saying that puppies and extreme film are not mutually exclusive. I love puppies. But no, I think too, it kind of ties into what everyone's said already. But the idea that we go to cinema for, Hollywood is the dream factory. It's supposed to create these, ways that we can escape daily life and kind of be carried off and into pleasure and enjoyment and relaxation. And so that's kind of the main, way that people tend to think about cinema. And so to try and translate that to, extreme stuff like a Serbian film or necromantic, is sort of like, well, why would you like that? Because they're coming at it from like, oh, I go to the movies to enjoy myself, and so you must be enjoying that, and that makes you weird, when that's not what it's about. I think what's come out so far in the discussion is kind of that feeling of enjoying that feeling of being made uncomfortable or having boundaries pushed in a way that kind of makes you think. And I think there is a lot of value to being made uncomfortable. That's not to say every boundary pushing film is a masterpiece or anything like that. Just that that's definitely part of it. The other thing I would say is that some of the films, I mean, we talked about those kind of like you hear a Serbian film and you freak out and go, oh, that's that newborn porn movie. A film I've been thinking a lot about recently, which isn't technically extreme horror, but it had the same thing, right? I don't know if anyone else has seen it. Sandra Wallner's Trouble with Being Born, which caused a big fuss here in Australia. It won a prize in Berlin, and it's a very well-regarded film. But people freaked out when there was a newspaper headline that said child sex android film, and people were just like, oh no, we can't, ban it, it's got to go. When really the film is so divorced, like, that really just doesn't capture what this film is at all. It's like if you said, no, it's not like that, but I'll be careful with my words and what films I compare it to. But yeah, I guess the idea is that if you reduce anything to a sexy headline, that you're not going to have an experience with it that takes it seriously. And so people also watching films like this, I think even when they're not as extreme in terms of violence and stuff, but something like Walner's film, I think is designed to make you feel uncomfortable. And people don't like kind of having to question their own viewing experience, or feel like they're part of it, or it's making them reflect on who they are as people. Like I think Walner's film particularly interrogates our relationship with technology in really subtle, nuanced ways that have nothing to do with child sex robots or whatever.
And honestly, the child sex robot thing is the least interesting thing about that film.
Yeah, the film goes way off into other directions that I think are, far more unsettling for me anyway. But that's, I think it's the idea that it's cinema must be pleasure, and that also I don't want to be made to feel uncomfortable when I'm watching a film, and so I avoid any of that, and you must be a freak or something tends to be the way that people think about these films.
Child sex robot makes me want to see the movie. Like it does the exact opposite for me, and I'm like, oh, what is
because
this?
You're like, yes, pedophilia. It's because you're like, whoa, what is this film have to say? Like,
not championing like the pedophilia. I'm championing oh, this seems really interesting. What do they have to say about this?
Exactly.
Which is way more wordy way to say it.
We conflate kind of subject matter with endorsing it. It's like, no, that's
exactly.
not the same.
Nope, absolutely not. That doesn't excite me. I'm just curious to see what they have to say. So I get that. I love those answers. Thank you so much. Somebody was sorry, Ariel.
This comment here, Ben, hello.
Oh yes, thank you.
It's funny because this really plays into something that I said at the first panel, which is that these movies aren't always gore. Like they're not. Yeah. Like always just go as hard as you can on a body. A lot of times extreme films, and I'll cite like Lars von Trier and Gaspar Noé, they're extreme because of their thematic elements, their themes. When you enter into the realm of like incest or pedophilia or like just that there, it's either, honestly, it seems like a rape. It's either going to be like an Oscar-winning movie if you have the right cast, or it's going to be an extreme horror film. Yeah. And so it's like there are a ton of extreme horror movies that are just gore, and those, obviously that's one aspect of it, but another aspect of the extreme nature is just the thematic elements, and those are the ones that I tend to be drawn toward more, because those are the ones that make me like really think about why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling and what it is about the subject that's stirring things. So I just wanted to put that out there.
And I think for me too, like the movies like Requiem for a Dream that are out there, to me, hit even more extreme notes than a lot of my favorite extreme horror films in general. But those are considered Oscar bait and to be doing what they're doing and to push the boundaries the way that they push them, just because they don't push them, beyond narratives that we've been told, about drugs are bad. But the second that you get into other kinds of narratives that are maybe expressing things the same way cinematically, but might introduce, more objectionable themes or be specifically parked in the horror genre, it becomes deeply, deeply disturbing to a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a great point. I always think of the dildo scene as well.
Oh my god!
That's the most intense thing I've ever. Yeah,
I almost had a breakup happen because of that one scene. The breakup was coming eventually, but that
anyway. Sounds like a story.
But that's a great point. I never really thought about that, because you're right. It's like so extreme. And then when I think about that scene, I'm like, wait, how is that okay? And like other ones aren't, like Old Boy or whatever is considered more, that's crazy.
Yeah. I know. Oh, don't even get me started on the fucking elevated horror, post-horror, art house horror. That that would be a whole other conversation. But I will say, holy shit. No.
Another panel.
No. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But an hour of a guy mutilating themselves. So there is a movie that is essentially that I love, and that is American Guinea Pig Sacrifice. But there's a story. There is a story there of this deeply depressed man who is mutilating himself to help bring forth the goddess Ishtar. And I am obsessed with this movie. And he pretty much, and it's very well done, very well acted, and I find quite empowering at the end. But that's something there's something for everyone. And we did say this in an earlier panel that within horror, it's very diverse. You have so many subgenres and so many different things that's going to work for different people. Extreme horror is exactly the same. You are going to have a lot of gore, but you're also going to have those like very narrative heavy movies as well that maybe there's more implied, and I love the whole thing that Jerry said. It's like the themes of it is what's going to be more disturbing than maybe, yes, gore and blood and mayhem and whatnot. So absolutely. Oh, somebody saying, I love Blood Diner. Love it too.
Oh yeah.
Ishtar, yes. So moving into our next question. And this is so relevant to what we we're just talking about, but so extreme horror delves into a multitude of very taboo subject matter: death, sex, murder, torture, rape, incest, necrophilia, infanticide, pedophilia, and more. So for you folks here tonight, what's your threshold or endpoint? Do you have one, or a film that you're like, I will never watch that again. I never even want to hear the name.
I don't have a film, but I do have a concept. And that concept is essentially like anything that really, truly is trying to depict reality as if it is fiction, or anything that is really, truly documenting what is happening. Anything that goes outside of the realm of fiction, I am uninterested in actually watching people experiencing trauma on screen for real.
Right. I gotcha. Yeah.
I need the frame. I need the screen to represent something to me. If that screen no longer represents like a frame, then I'm out.
Yeah. It's really interesting because a lot of people, I'm sure you've probably had this conversation in your own life, but being into extreme cinema, I'm sure you all have friends that really like true crime, but they don't like horror. Like this happens to me all the time. And that's exactly what you're saying. They'll listen to these podcasts about people torturing someone, but then they'll think you're sick for watching like a movie that has jump scares. And I just like, how can you, the two things are the same, but that one's almost worse. The true crime is what you're talking about. And especially when they're describing that, like that's so much more disturbing. I don't really think I have a line. I probably wouldn't watch Salo again. Like I just can't do it. I've tried to sit down to do it for a video. I watched like the whole film. I own the film. I don't know why. And then I've like sat down to watch it again, and I just have to turn it off halfway through every time. I'm like, I can't do this. And I've listened to so many and read a lot of essays on it, and I just don't get it. Like a lot of people talk about how, like all of the different meanings and pick aparts, and it just does not work for me.
Well, it's also 2.5 hours long, so I get that.
Yeah, that's true. I just couldn't do it again. I'm like, why am I putting myself through this? Like and that's one of the things, I guess it seems so real as well. And there's like, I mean, obviously a lot to do with the background, but it's just like horrendous. And it's slow, like it's slow, disturbing.
Yeah.
So, music though.
For me.
Music is pretty great in it. I love a good score. I have to say, like, I totally agree. I know American society pretty much romanticizes Ted Bundy, and how many movies with beautiful men have come out about Ted Bundy, but they literally will demonize Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, which is one of the best on-screen depictions of that, sociopathic, murderous nature ever. And, it's a fantastic movie. And you say it to anybody that has heard it, or, it's another one of those that had a lot of, was banned at a lot of places. But then you can go on Netflix and see this, like childhood star play Ted Bundy, who's one of the most horrific, serial killers in history. So it's an interesting relationship that, like, people have with horror and stuff. For me, vomit is a big thing for me. That's
fair.
That's kind of stuff. Yeah. So, and Ariel, you're talking about like depictions of actual torture on screen. I think like Slaughtered Vomit Dolls. That movie has kind of a history of that kind of tenuous relationship between reality, because that actress was actually
I'm out
going through a lot of stuff. Yeah. So I mean, just that, like, there are things I'll have to, like, maybe I'll look away from if I've already seen it and I know it's coming, but it's really not a lot, and vomit does it pretty bad.
Yeah, that's fair. I for one of the things that we do for Spinsters of Horror once a month, I challenge my co-host Jessica. It's Let's Scare Jessica to Death, and I dare her to watch a movie, and she's only tapped out once, and it was to The Human Centipede, and that's when I discovered that Jess can't do poop. So I was like, okay, that's your threshold. One of them.
that is a film that I made the mistake of reading the synopsis of it. I think Human Centipede 2. I know there was this huge scandal about that in the UK. So I read the BBFC classification notes and was just like, I don't need to watch that. I'm good. And it probably was poop, to be honest, because I've seen a Serbian film and had no problem with it, which also had a similar kind of, it reads a lot worse on paper than it is watching it within the context of a horror movie. For me, it's animal stuff. I know we kind of broached on it before, but actual animal torture, not, simulated, obviously. I remember getting really excited. There was a period in Australia, I was working at a video shop, I think it was probably early 2000s, when a lot of extreme films that had been banned since like the 70s started to get reclassified and distributed. And so I bought a copy of Cannibal Holocaust, and I was like, yes, this taboo thing that I've heard about and I haven't been able to see. And then I watched it. I kind of felt dead inside, and I sold it. I sold it on eBay because, like, you know what? I didn't return to that movie. Like, I'm glad I've seen it. But yeah, where animals, they can't consent. I don't like it. I'm fine with the simulated stuff. But yeah, anything kind of real. Also, I don't know why I struggle with self-harm. Like the Marina de Van's Dans Ma Peau, I probably pronounced that really wrong. But that was one of the most difficult films, I think.
Really?
Take breaks and go outside and breathe fresh air because I was feeling nauseous. And I don't know why. It might have, my housemate, I think, came in and started cooking bacon in the next room. That didn't it was that for me was really difficult in ways that I kind of can't explain. It must just be a threshold that I found, even though that's all simulated. But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's all very personal. I'd have to say, thinking of one thing, animals for sure, but honestly, it's like, I guess I'm going to call it non-consensual incest. But
wait, what?
I know, right? I guess, like, I don't know if like a brother and sister want to be in love and they were like, yeah, no, we're in love. We're going to do this.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. Still kind of weird.
So I was still thinking of a Serbian film, and I was there was no.
Greg C is mentioning Eat. Okay, so
I love Eat.
Don Ma Po is one of my favorite films, actually, within Extremity. I'll be honest, but Eat gives me a lot of difficulty.
That's
for
fair.
different reasons, for very different reasons, and I almost watched it last night.
Oh, get you in the mood. Yeah. I think there's one film thus far out of everything I have watched, though it's not even extreme horror. I think it's just an extreme film, and it's Snowtown. Because that runs into the realm of serial killer stuff, and that normally actually I'm also fine with, but first 5 minutes there's pedophilia implied. Within 15 minutes there's incest, and then like this incredibly realistic portrayals of this Australian serial killer. And I was like, no, I'm not okay right now. I'm not okay with this movie. I'm not okay how I feel. And I look over to my partner at the time after he watched it, and he was fine. I was like, I don't understand what's happening. Normally I'm fine. But I was like, no, this was not okay. And so that is a movie, even if somebody says those words, I'm like, no. It's just like the combination of all those things and the very realistic, like torture and everything, like just everything combined was just like a mishmash of a whole bunch of no-nos. Whew, like even just, again, thinking about it is like produces some anxiety. And it's like, that is just a very, just overall incredibly disturbing case and thing that happened in real life. So that in itself, I think. But when it comes to horror, so far, not yet. So that's pretty good, I guess.
It goes back to what Emma was saying about the crossover between true crime and then these extreme films where that's kind of treading this line, right? That you're like, oh, I know this really happened. And so you don't have that same sort of exactly divorced from it in the way that you can with, I don't know.
It's like movies like Spotlight, even though it's not disturbing, like the whole idea behind it is like what really creeps you out, and at the end you see like the names and everything, and it just gives you that feeling. I think it hits very differently.
Totally. So let me see. I don't know how many questions that we have yet. Jess hasn't said anything. Mainly we've been getting comments, but for the sake of time, I'm going to take out one question for now. If we have time, I'll go back to it. So, okay. Whew. Well, since we've talked all about that, let's get down to this. Why do you personally, specifically love extreme horror? Why is this a genre that you champion all the time? And I will start with Ariel.
Oh no. Okay.
I keep putting people off guard. Damn.
Well, no, it's not that I'm off guard. It's just you've heard this from me.
I know, but not everybody else has.
Okay. Well, anyway, I mean, I love extreme cinema in general. I've always loved extreme cinema just because I find that is where people are doing the most interesting work artistically. Right. I find that, you always find directors and cinematographers and actors who are really pushing themselves to their limits, whether it's for their own personal health's benefit or not is another question that we could debate, Allie, talking about Isabella Gianni, for example. But at the same time, in terms of the expression of it and the way that it appears on screen, it always has this beautiful effect of being something so different and so fresh compared to anything else. Whenever you're looking at something that deals with the extremes, where you have a director or a writer who is really plumbing the depths and, like taking, a scalpel and excavating things you didn't want excavated. And, I find that for me, the genre represents not only everything that, you sort of never want to see, but secretly do, that's behind the curtain, but it also represents kind of those things that you need to evaluate in some level in society, whether you think you need to or not, it's there. And there are artists who are willing to show it to you, but you have to, kind of, like, I don't know, have a stiff upper lip about it. I don't know. I don't want to say like, grow hair on your chest or something, but like, there's just a certain amount of difficulty that you're always going to have to break through in order to pierce that veil. That's all.
There. Yeah. Excellent. Allie?
I love being challenged, and I think the place that I've found I can go to be challenged, in terms of thinking and it's finding limits and sort of and pushing them in a safe way. I'm not like a massive drug addict or anything like that. There's plenty of ways you can find limits and break them.
Not a massive one, but
not a massive one, just very fun on weekends. yeah, for me, it's engaging with cinema that makes me feel uncomfortable or challenged and makes me think. And I love thinking, and so this is where I get that. So I love these sorts of films. That's my short but probably honest answer.
I love that. Jerry, why do you love and champion extreme horror?
I think it gets a bad rap.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
Like we said earlier, a lot of people don't watch the movies that we're talking about. And, we haven't really talked about a lot of the really over the top ones, because I don't think that that's what we're really talking about, like the ones that are just like the murder set pieces of the world that it's just, like gore for gore's sake kind of thing. So many of these stories are gorgeous. They're gorgeously shot. There's a lot of thought that goes into the characters and the narrative, and it does something that no other films do. And so I think that's really interesting. And I like to wake up the next morning and still be thinking about it, and want to talk to my fellow extreme horror lovers about it, and I want to write about it. And I'll write about movies because that's what I do, but then I really want to delve into why I'm feeling the way I feel after I watch this. And again, I'm not talking about all of the movies in this genre, in this subgenre, but a lot of them really hit that mark for me, and so I love it. And I would never be like, wow, you're not watching these movies, why? But I do like to try to at least show that there's value to them. Like, there's value to these movies. There's merit in making the people that are making them, the people that are acting in them, and the people that are watching them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Emma, why do you love it?
I come from it from when I watch like a really disturbing movie. Mainly I like psychological ones. So, that have like a big like arc with some kind of event. Not so much like the gory ones aren't really what I gravitate towards, but like one of my favorite directors, Gaspar Noé, like with his films, it's so interesting to think about his intent. And even though his films are so disturbing and have these amazing scenes, afterwards you walk away and you really think about what he's trying to say. And that's the whole thing with horror. Horror is saying things that we want to say, but in a completely different way, and using characters to kind of tell that story. So I think disturbing films are, filmmakers saying something that they haven't seen said before or have no words for. And I think that's it's a really interesting part of the human experience to connect to people through art and how they're trying to say that. So I find disturbing ones obviously push all the boundaries of things that you can't really say socially, I guess.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And before we get open up the floor to audience questions, how about you name and give the audience and all of us listening and watching, what are some of your favorite films then? I'll start with mine. Right now I'm pretty obsessed with Trauma, a Chilean film. I rewatched it last night, and because it was one of those films that I watched a couple months ago, and I was like, I cannot stop thinking about this movie. I had to write about it. I talk about it all the time, and I can't stop thinking about it, and rewatched it last night to kind of get in the mood for today. And I was like, I love this movie. That is another one that is incredibly well made, that I think is like this spiritual twin to a Serbian film, but I like it more. I like it a lot more. I feel like it somehow has rewatchability to it. Maybe it's its awesome soundtrack, but I love Trauma and how it was created. I love all the political context behind it. Again, I had to write about it, and I love it. So right now, whenever somebody asks me, it's Trauma. How about you, Emma? Might as well start with you, and then we'll go with others.
I guess Martyrs is like a huge one for me because of the journey is insane. And Gaspar, before we're talking about Gaspar, Love is my favorite Gaspar film, which is kind of rare to say. But I like all of his films, but I really enjoyed that and the character arc. I'm trying to think of anything else. I want to throw an Australian one, so Bad Boy Bubby, which is probably very controversial.
You say Bad
such
Boy
a great
Bubby?
film. Bad Boy Bubby.
Okay. I've been making a bit of like a watch list throughout these
Oh
panels.
my god, you are not ready. You are not ready. Like-
Makes you re-look at
Bad
Glad
point.
Wrap, doesn't it?
Yeah, maybe you don't
I'm
have your
so
cat in the room
excited.
either. Yeah, which is phenomenal performance. And yeah, I guess Martyrs would probably be the top of my like one that's like the most accessible to people. But obviously a lot of like French horror and French Canadian horror is just like so good.
Excellent. Jerry.
Okay, yeah. So Pola X, I had said earlier today, and that's the one that if somebody asks, that's typically what I'll give first off. It's I think it's 70s. I hope. And it's a gorgeous movie, and I love it. Gaspar Noé again. Yeah, please, all the time. Martyrs also. Calvaire. It's a lot of French. It's a lot of new French extremity.
They're great movies.
That's
Yeah.
That movie
like
is so
my
good.
favorite stuff. It's so good. And there's a short film called Cutting Moments that is really outstanding. And that really goes a lot. That goes deep very quickly. So yeah, those guys, and then pretty much anything Lars von Trier. Also inject it into my eyeballs.
Excellent. Ariel, besides Martyrs?
All right. Besides Martyrs, which everybody knows is my favorite.
Yeah.
I know.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. All right. So I dearly love a lot of great Asian films, but I have to say, like, my favorites are the ones that hit weird notes for most other people, like Happiness of the Katakuris. Is maybe one of my favorites out of Japan. I love Atroz out of Mexico.
Yeah.
I love also out of Japan, Urotsukidoji, which is an anime tentacle hentai kind of thing. But it's pretty extreme and enjoyable in my mind. It's not for everyone, but it's more my thing. And I've just had that on the brain lately because of things. But I really also feel like things like I Spit on My Grave I just really hit unusual notes for me. And I know we're not talking about rape revenge, but nonetheless, I think that there is a place kind of in my canon for a lot of those kinds of films where there might not be in other people's.
Agreed. Allie, a couple of your favorite films?
Sweet.
Martyrs?
I'd be lying if, I have a confession. I have not seen it. I have read about it.
How exciting.
I'm so excited.
Oh,
yeah.
That is exciting.
That is so
I
exciting.
read about it and then decided I needed to wait until I'd forgotten what I'd read in order to get the experience.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
I will do that. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't Possession, obviously, which more recently, Brandon Cronenberg's Possessor just knocked me for the six. It was amazing. Really love Julia DeCournau's Raw. Is great, and I'm so excited about her new film that won the Palme d'Or. I haven't seen it yet, but I can't wait. And anything by Gaspar Noé. Love was my favorite for a long time. I teach it, and I adore it, and I defend it every semester. As,
oh my god, I didn't know that. That's so awesome.
Amazing. But I also have a very soft spot for Climax. I think it's so much fun.
It is.
Spike the Sangria psychedelic dance party. Let's go. But there's some of my favorites.
It's a good diverse list. I feel like Martyrs is almost a given sometimes because, like, how do you not like that movie and love it and are like completely transformed after watching it? It just is. Like, that's just like, it's out there.
Okay, and Allie's cheating because she got to name Possessor and Possession. You know, like they're too close to each other. Can't possibly.
Come on. They're like decades apart.
But obviously they're both brilliant. So I thoroughly back this.
All right, let's open up the floor to some questions. And folks, if you do have questions, please let us know. and put it into the chat. And Jess, our tech gremlin, will put it on the screen. Oh, Lord. Sorry. My screen is very short. Let me make it bigger. There it is. Okay. What are your thoughts on Cuties? Is this considered an extreme movie or inappropriate or pushing boundaries for cinema? I don't really know what that is. I can't comment on that.
Okay, I can comment on this, and my answer is extremely short. The extremely short answer is no, no, no.
And I respect that. I would probably back it up.
If you want me to back it up, I can try, but
has anyone actually seen it? I'm just wondering.
I have.
Oh, you guys. Oh, okay, cool.
Why is it not? Maybe is a good way to ask it.
It's another film, I guess. It's not like Sandra Wallner's Trouble with Being Born, but it's another film that kind of got blown out of proportion, I think, in terms of what it was into like this quick little clickbait. This is child pornography, and it's disgusting, just having, and it is unsettling, but it's meant to be unsettling, like so many of these films. But what the director does is kind of use, it's making a social commentary on girls growing up and being, peer pressured into, being sexually active before they're ready to kind of be explicit on Instagram and stuff. But it does it in a way that uses the kind of male gaze in order to make this critique. And so that's very unsettling. And so, there were calls to ban Netflix over this film.
And I think that's the main issue is that it was on Netflix, so obviously it's open to such like a mainstream.
But the thing that really upsets me about this, though, is that I find 8th grade much more explicit and disturbing on a lot of levels than I found
so awkward.
I'm just saying.
Because it's so true. I think that the main, I went back and forth with this one as well. And I haven't seen it, but I read a lot and I saw a couple of clips. But I think that the main thing that I can see a problem with that film is because of the actors. Because when you're using underage girls to tell this story about sexualizing underage girls and then using actors, but it's not really, it can't be done without using them, so maybe it just shouldn't have been done, maybe, I don't know.
It's a complicated one.
It is.
And I don't know if you might have read about the poster as well, the way that Netflix branded it.
They marketed
completely
it
different to how it was branded in France.
It's kind of like a Jennifer's Body kind of thing where they try and like make it sexy and you're like, but this is not what it's meant to be.
No, it's not meant to be sexy. That's the point. No, I think there's a lot of stuff to be said as well about young actors and child protection and stuff. So I think it's a complicated one, but it is interesting. Yeah.
Great question. Thank you. Next one is one from our previous panel from Scott Bradley, who does Hellbent for Horror podcast. He's asking thoughts on Otto Ittenbach, who's a German splatter creator. Anybody have thoughts? I just watched, he's pretty like infamous and well known in the like extreme underground horror world, mainly just because of his extreme well done gore in his films. He's German director, writer, creator, whatnot. And I only saw one of his movies relatively recently because it kept being recommended, and it's Pre-Mutos. And I loved it. I had a great time with it. It was a lot of fun, and the practical gore effects were fantastic. So, I mean, I've seen one movie, I can't comment, but I know that he is well known and a lot of people quite like him. There's a movie called No Reason that a lot of people seem to like, but I have yet to watch it. Maybe tomorrow. But no, I don't really have any other thoughts on that. Anybody else? Anybody watch any German splatter?
I'm writing down the name because I don't know it.
Yeah, German splatter. I need more of that. Greg, do you think with extreme horror, it's easier to enjoy the movie when it doesn't directly relate to something that happened in your own life? Great question. Who wants to tackle that one first?
I think a lot of what happens in extreme horror, at least, especially like the Japanese or geez, what am I thinking? Did that one? Oh, American Guinea Pigs. Like a lot of that doesn't happen in life.
Hopefully.
But I know what you're talking about. Like rape revenge movies. I know a lot of people. It's usually either one way or the other. Either people really are able to process things when they see it on screen, and then other people, not. And that's all like a totally personal kind of journey. But I mean, some of it's oftentimes it's just like so extreme, over the top, and like it's so past that threshold of reality that it's easy to not see, your own personal experience in it. But there are other movies where it's very much there, and for me, difficult, but it's processing. It's a good processing tool, if you can call it a tool. That's just for me, though. It doesn't like trigger me to want to, hurt myself or others.
Yeah. I think for a lot of people, they feel a desperate need to identify with whatever the characters on screen are going through. And so for a lot of people who've been through synonymous experiences or that feel sort of synonymous, they automatically tend to identify with a character on screen. And I can completely understand why there are so many people who say, I can't see anything that seems to represent my experience in any way on screen. But having now made a film that deliberately represents my own like childhood traumas on screen, I will say, like, there's also something very magical and very freeing about that process. And so the question is just, how are you going to view that? And are you able to kind of give yourself the proper kind of distance as a viewer, as a creator, as a consumer of media? And just being aware of your own limits, I think, in all cases.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was thinking, like, I guess it depends on the person's own personal state and where they're at with whatever it is that they might be watching. That's why, if I'm ever going to show my co-host Jess a film, I'm just like, I know what I can and cannot show her, because there are limits to what she can watch comfortably. There's some stuff I'm being uncomfortable, but it's finding out what everybody's limits are, what they're comfortable with. So yeah, I think for myself, I would say that it probably is a little bit easier to watch something if you haven't at all been in that situation, but maybe it also comes down to empathy as well, because no, I have not been tortured by a serial killer, but Snowtown, that's something else.
And okay, like, I've never been a Disney princess, but for some reason, every time I watch a Disney movie, I'm weeping by the end. Like, I don't know what that is. So
are you
someone
sure you
tell
haven't
me.
been a Disney princess?
Don't even.
Oh, next question from Greg C. again. What is everyone's thoughts on kids watching
Disney.
disturbing or gross cartoons or dark tunes that we kind of grew up on, such as in early Disney, like Dumbo, Mickey Mouse, Ren and Stimpy, or Invader Sim? Emma? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean,
giggling,
they're wild.
They're,
it was just so funny that you just said Disney and then Disney came up.
Oh, yes.
Some of those early TV shows are just wild, like Invader Zim and stuff. When you look back at the themes and the storylines, it's just so wild, like that a kid can like comprehend what the heck's going on. But I think like early Disney, I don't know if you would say it's disturbing, but maybe for a kid that age, like I just think of like Pinocchio when they like turn like all the when he gets turned into a donkey. It's so scary. But that's also just an age range thing, I think, and I think that's with like kids experiencing anything. You kind of I don't think it's super didisturbing now. It's not something that's stuck with me. Not with everything else I consume.
Yeah, I don't think it's that. I don't want to say harmful, but I don't know if it really has that much traction or power on those types of minds. There are some movies that, you know, are sometimes shown to kids. I don't know kids movies nowadays, but I know growing up, they're like Return to Oz and stuff like that. Holy moly.
Oh,
like,
man.
One of the most disturbing films ever made.
What?
I
Really?
love Return to Oz.
I love it. Also I thought very scary and disturbing growing up. And even as an adult, it's hard for me to revisit it. But I don't know, would it like harm me in any way? No, it just unsettled me. You know, I feel like when you're at that age, unless you're actually watching something that is, I guess, kind of like taboo busting and really transgressive, but I don't know if there's kids, I don't remember those shows really, you know, so are they really that transgressive? I don't think so. I don't know. What about the Fear Street novels? All those kids were dying. I loved them. I read them all the time.
Yeah, I guess it's weird like revisiting these things now, because obviously when you go back and you watch any of those movies, like they seem so epic at the time, and then you watch them, it's not really a big deal. And then there's like films like I love the film Babe. Talking big, because it's so clever, like the actual context of like the situation, but it's like, isn't that an insane story that it's talking about purpose, and if you don't have a purpose you die, and then it's just like talking animals though, and it's just I think that's more disturbing in a different way. But I don't eat meat now.
But going back to the question about like, you know, what we expose children to and so forth, I also feel like there's this great sense of like, you know, what harm are we causing children by, you know, letting them watch, you know, Invader Zim or cartoons that are a little more violent. Like, okay, let's say you wanted to show your 8-year-old Harley Quinn, you know, with its foul-mouthed, highly violent, sexualized content from HBO Max, etc. Like, the thing is, I am speaking as someone who literally watched A Nightmare on Elm Street at age 3.
Yeah.
So I'm clearly not going to be like the majority opinion of America when I say this, but I generally believe that children can be exposed to different things and have it not harm them. And in general, it can actually be, you know, not necessarily the most developmentally appropriate thing for them at that age, but ultimately, if it has no resonance for them, if there's no reason for them to respond to it in some way, it's not going to stick with them. It's like, you know, we never question the teaching of Romeo and Juliet, you know, with its themes, but we question all kinds of other things that have you know, equally unsettling themes. So
going back to extreme horror versus Requiem for a Dream, which is yes, exactly. Okay, we're going to one last question here for the night. What is a film or a specific scene that impacted you the most, whether negatively, like you never wanted to watch it again, or pushed you further into extreme horror?
Isabella Gianni in the subway.
Oh my God.
If you haven't seen Possession, that scene is just so affecting in so many ways. But yeah, that made me really question what was possible in terms of performance. And yeah, it really spurred my interest in extreme cinema.
Excellent.
For me, it would be Irreversible. And it isn't even the scene that everybody thinks about. It's, I mean, like when I first saw it, I hadn't seen I Stand Alone yet, and so like just the way that Noé told the story, even though that was like a fluke apparently, he wasn't planning on telling it in reverse, and like what a great fluke. But the way that the story is told, the feeling that I got when I watched it, with everything leading up to, you know, the scene in the underground walkway, it was just amazing. And I'd never seen a movie do those things, and just the way that he broke it up, and the really just heartbreaking nature of a movie that is so extreme. The themes in his movies are really push every limit, and you know, it's everything. It's xenophobia, it's racism, it's rape, it's homophobia. Like everything is wrapped up in this, and it really just makes you have to stop and kind of like examine. And that for me, you know, I mean, who knows how I got from there to like, you know, slaughtered vomit dolls, but that was kind of the little stepping stone into it, just to see something that can really like take you into such depth.
Yeah, Emma.
I guess it's hard to pick a scene because I don't think there's any scene that makes me never want to watch something again, like a particular scene. But one thing that I think about is the movie Found, which is such an incredible movie. But when he obviously opens that, just at the start, I guess, like I always think about when he opens that like bowling bag or whatever it is, and there's just like, that head inside.
Yeah.
It's just like so unexpected, and it just opens up like just a can of worms, like so many questions. And yeah, I think that's just like such an amazing scene. And such a good like low budget film as well. Like it's just incredible. Yeah.
I liked it a lot too. Yeah. Allie, Ariel, you're thinking?
For me, my threshold movie that sort of like defined, like that deeply disturbed me at the time, but then was like, oh no, I want more of this, was when I watched the movie 9mm. I don't know if anyone here ever saw that movie with Nicolas Cage.
8mm.
8mm. Sorry.
Absolutely. As a teenager, I loved it.
As a teenager, just getting the concept of what snuff film was in that one scene.
Shit, you're right.
I was like, holy shit. This is the most dark, depraved, horrible thing imaginable in the world, and I felt sick to my stomach. I came out of that theater. I vomited for, I kid you not, like 20 minutes. It was not a pleasant experience. And I just was so deeply disturbed by just the concept of the thing that I now cannot watch at all, obviously. So, you know, I mean, it's not that 8mm itself as a movie was deeply disturbing, but it introduced me to the concept that I find deeply disturbing. So anyway.
Great. Now I feel like I truly understand why I am where I am today, because I love that movie and had it on VHS. So here we go. Allie?
Oh, mine, Possession.
All right, did I start with you? I'm
cheating
sorry.
all the
Kind
time.
of jumped in. No, I jumped in. It was the subway scene from Possession.
You can't just say that movie I wrote a book about, you know?
That's like every time, every answer to every question.
The question was like, what was the movie that affected you? Like, if you write a book about it, it must have had an impact. I think it's fair.
That's amazing. I feel like for me, the movie that made me want to really like jump into this and take this journey, we'll call it, in taboo terrors. And when I didn't even have a name for it yet, it was Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, which I love so, so much. And I was like, you know what? Like I had just bought it because I didn't own it. And I was like, yes, this is it. Like, this is what I want to do. I love these types of movies so much. And I feel like no one's really talking about them, and they deserve to be talked about, you know, and there deserves to be more attention paid to movies like this. So that's essentially, I would say that is a movie that really just kind of flipped my switch on to getting me to where I am today a couple of years later, for sure. Absolutely. Excellent. Oh, somebody's saying 8mm is excellent. There's an Italian remake by Bruno Mattei, which I also love. It changes the hero into a mother whose daughter is kidnapped by snuff photographers. I didn't know about that.
All right, chase it down.
Sure. All right. All right. Well, I would say that's it. We've run the gamut, only about 10 to 15 minutes over, which is really, really good in my books. So, of course, I want to thank all of you from the bottom of my weirdo black heart for coming here today and talking about this, especially my Australian brethren up and early in the morning with your coffee, joining us today. Your opinions and thoughts and so wonderful and thoughtful and invaluable. So thank you so much. And Ariel again, and Jerry again, you came on multiple times today. And thank you so much. This was amazing. And thank you, of course, to Jess, my tech gremlin behind the scenes, doing everything. It ran so smoothly. It was amazing. So this was an incredible day of guests, discussions, laughter, which who thought? I did. We'd laugh and have such a great bonding experience over our love of extreme horror and everything it has to offer people. So please join me again next year for round 2, because my eventual plan is to make this like a 2-day event with more panels, like focused on specific films and subject matter and themes and creators, and maybe have a movie screening, stuff like that. So I'm hoping to build this on. I hope everybody will join me again next year for this. But thank you so much for making my very disturbing and weird nightmares come true. So thank you again, folks. Stay grim.
Thank you, Kelly. Really, thank you so much for devoting a full day to this.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you so much. It was amazing. So I guess I'll see you all online at some point.